Let's look to the future for a second. If we have this conversation, 1, 3, 5 years in the future, say 3 years in the future, what are we going to be talking about in terms of private cloud or hybrid cloud? And aren't all clouds going to be hybrid in the future? So, Carl, look into your crystal ball. What do you see, say 2020? What are we going to be talking about in this regard?
Well, I'm actually most excited about the container movement and things like Kubernetes in particular, being able to be a common framework or platform that exists in multiple spaces that make it easier to have real portability and automation. It is a big change to go from that model where you're using the container versus a VM. But the benefits are huge. I mean, you can get to a world where, in theory, the developer is responsible for his code wherever it is, and the IT and operations and DevOps folks are responsible for the platforms, and the friction is almost gone, right? Which is really the goal, is try to remove the friction between the business and operations, right? So I think it has the most promise, but it's a pretty huge change in the models.
I want to echo exactly what Carl just said. I think it's going to be completely frictionless in 5 years, and I think there will be automation tools that will establish policies as far as where that physical data lives. So that control of data issue will still be there. It'll be transparent to the developer. It won't make a difference, and that I think is going to be the big transition. I think that I've heard some numbers that maybe 3% of enterprises will actually be adopting containers this year, but I think that's going to ramp up dramatically, and that's part of that abstraction to where it's going to be completely frictionless for the developers.
Just for my own education, though, the containers is going to be a tool set, but it's not going to fundamentally alter the public-private scenario, or is it?
I think it will.
You think it will?
Yes, because it's isolated from the infrastructure, so it doesn't matter where it lives.
But it doesn't solve the problem that most companies write crappy apps.
That's you can't solve stupid, right?
Right. If you have a container that's using a 16 gig, 16 gigs all by itself, oh look, I'm running in a container now. I'm not sure they're doing it right. And Matt, I don't know if you heard that Google joined the OpenStack Foundation last week.
I saw it
for Kubernetes. Just wanted to point that out in case you missed that news.
I saw it.
But Matt, do we get your take on the future? 2020, what are we going to be talking about in terms of private public cloud?
I think it'll look very. I mean, I agree with the points made about containers, but I think in terms of public versus private, Amazon will be a lot bigger, and I think it'll still look the same for the reasons. I think it was Scott that Scott called out, and that's just human reasons of. There's a lot of friction there. We still use mainframes, and sometimes for good reason, sometimes for not so good reasons.
IBM makes a lot of money from mainframes.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
A more interesting question for me, and I don't know that I have the answer to this, but 5 years, well, not 5 years, it's too soon. 10 years from now, who's out of business? That's. I want somebody to go on. I want somebody to go on the record and put a name out there. What company's going to be out of business because they haven't managed the transition to the cloud? There's certainly some. When you look at the earnings reports, some companies are struggling to make this transition and may limp toward. But I think we all work for public companies, so maybe we're not allowed to say anything except for Engine Yard. But
Scott, you're taking the future?
In a way, I could ask, aren't we kind of living in the future already? Because we've been having this same conversation and debate for the better part of a decade already. And so I never really thought I'd say this, but I again agree with Matt in that I don't.
What are you talking about?
I don't think it's going to
agree with me.
I don't think it's going to look fundamentally different from a debate conversation. Oh, should it all be in public cloud? Should it be in private cloud? The answer is neither of those things. It should be where you want it and need it to be, and where it makes the most sense for you. I do agree with Carl that and Greg, a lot of this stuff is just going to get more transparent. I don't want to be having a debate in 5 years over public or private. I just want them all to be transparent targets that, especially at the big enterprise level, that there's someone over there just deciding what target this thing runs on, and me as a developer, I'm just writing code and pressing deploy. And where it lands, I could care less, right?
That's right.
I don't want to know. I don't even care. The same way today I don't think about what hypervisor my cloud's running. I don't even want to think about what cloud my cloud is running. I just want my stuff to go out and meet my needs.
But Scott, that's very much a developer perspective, right? The CIO is obviously going to be concerned about policies and business process, and still they're going to be concerned about where if it's on-prem, off-prem.
The CIO is your world, Greg. I'm all.
Well, so that's what I'm saying. If you don't, Greg, to your point, if you, or maybe against your point, if you don't solve the problem for developers, I don't think it's going to matter that you solve it for CIOs, because the CIO, to an extent, I mean, who was it? Billy Marshall years ago. CIO is the last to know. This train is not going to slow down. So if you and Scott and others can truly deliver that experience, where the developer just gets on, they don't care where they're deploying, they just want that ease of use, then I'll become a believer. Because what I'm really driven by, what I really believe in, is that convenience sells. And until the private cloud providers can deliver that developer convenience, then there's always going to be a problem.
I'll make this distinction. I don't think the CIO or CTO in a lot of organizations is as concerned about that convenience as the developers are. I think Matt, you're absolutely right. From a developer perspective, that convenience is absolutely critical. But who's making those decisions as far as what technologies are being deployed ultimately? The key decision makers, while the developers are influencers, the key decision makers are those CIOs and CTOs. So ultimately, they've got to be convinced of the value of that. And I think
more and more, though,
the transparency problem.
It's becoming the line of business.
I'd agree with Scott on that.
Yep, I agree with that too. That's
the
line of business is the decision makers, you're saying, Scott.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're the ones giving the CIO the money to begin with. And
that's true.
If you don't give me what I need, then I'm just going to go do it. And it's not shadow IT anymore when the president of my business unit says, go frickin' do it, right? And so we see that a lot, and we're going to continue to see that.
Yeah, next thing you know, the CIO's procuring laptops and fixing printers, right?
They've got to be good for something. And on that note, I think we really have said it. That's a lot of good stuff. Thank you very much to the four of you. I'll send you the link. We can tweet about it, and I think it was great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, James. This is fantastic.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
See ya.